This is Cold Start and another episode of Up to Temp. So we're behind the wheel of a car. We're going to hit the roads today, cruising once again through Sonoma County, enjoying a very, very special vehicle.
A glorious 71 degree, totally clear summer day here in Sonoma. Just driving around the back of turn 11 by the pit lane at Sonoma and getting ready to go out on the road. We're really excited. It's always special to go driving around here, but every once in a while you go out in something you feel like, oh, this is the car to be driving today.
This might be the loudest interior car that we're going to review. So without a further ado, we're in a Carrera GT, which is probably a halo car for a lot of people and a pretty, for me, an unbelievable experience to be behind the wheel of a Carrera GT.
You know, it's one of those things where you look at this car from the outside and you say, that's a 2005 car. That's a 20-plus-year-old design, and it looks as modern, as fresh as anything else that you'd see on the road today. More interesting, unique lines, unique shape, definitely unique ride height. This is a low car. When you're in this thing, you know, it's the daytime now, but at nighttime, you get blinded by people that just have their regular headlights on because you're just so much lower than the average car out on the road.
Yeah, we just got back from Monterey Car Week. We took this car down for one of those days, which, I mean, a Carrera GT is like the epitome of Car Week, right? This is a car that fits in down in Monterey during that event. And when we had it at Laguna Seca, there was a gentleman that came up and was like, when did Porsche come out with this? What year is this thing? And we said, you know, it's a 2005. He's like, there's no way that this car is a 2005. I mean, the styling is absolutely timeless. It's always breathtaking to see one of these cars. Cruising around Monterey in a Carrera GT, you feel like you're within like the top 10 best cars there. I mean, you could wave at anyone along your way cruising from point A to point B, and your thumbs up means a little bit more coming from a Carrera GT than some of those other vehicles.
It's all just part of the experience of being in this car, being around this car. You know, the way it looks is just drop dead gorgeous. The fact that it's a mid-engine car, you know, they've talked about for years, is the Porsche 911 going to go mid-engine? You know, they finally started doing that with some of their top-line race cars like the GT3R and the RSR type cars. And now here we are looking at their prototype of that, if you will, the first road-going car that they ever put out with a mid-engine configuration, and one that they built in limited number. This car is number 422 of 1,200 total examples made. Who knows how many of those are still out on the road or still driving. A lot of them just are down in garages and they never see the light of day. So it feels pretty special to be out in one, to use it the way it's intended, to drive this car and to really experience it on every sensory level.
Yeah, let's talk about the driving experience in the Carrera GT a little bit more, because you talked about how maybe not all the cars still exist, right? I mean, there's some pretty infamous crashes of Carrera GTs getting totaled, people actually losing their lives behind the wheel of a Carrera GT on the street. And then there's also the talks about, you know, the clutch and how the clutch is very interesting and maybe potentially very difficult to drive. So let's talk a little bit more about that history. So a lot of people look at the Carrera GT as, you know, the big W widowmaker. And they use that term a lot in the Porsche lineage. And the Carrera GT actually had some examples of people, you know, losing control of them and actually losing their lives. And so there's always been this aura around the Carrera GT that it's such a dangerous, difficult to manage car. And then also on that day-to-day basis of talking about that clutch, of everyone talking about how difficult it is to get a Carrera GT going from a standstill. It is a 6-speed manual transmission, which is awesome, right? We love that. We love that analog experience. But everyone always talks about how challenging that clutch is.
Yeah, it's a little counterintuitive. If you're used to driving a stick shift car, a manual car, you know that when you are releasing the clutch and you're trying to get going from a standstill in first gear, you have to feather on the throttle a little bit. You need to give it a little gas, otherwise the car will stall right from out underneath you. But this car, the design of it is such that there's not really even a flywheel to speak of. It's just this tiny little coupling in the clutch mechanism and it's effectively a shaft drive car. So the mechanics of getting it rolling are really tricky. And this is a carbon ceramic clutch in this car. So it's really finicky, it's small, and it's damn expensive. You know, if you have to do a replacement of your clutch on this car, estimates are $30,000 and up for that. So you need to be careful with it. And they knew when they put this car out, they didn't want people just burning up the clutches. So what they did is they brought in the technology from their Formula One program, because, you know, Porsche had been developing Formula One cars in the 90s with the footwork team. They were starting to develop this very car's engine as a potential Formula One car, eventually for LMP, and then it wound up in the production car. But they decided to bring Formula One technology into this car in the form of an anti-stall that helped you get going off the line so you wouldn't stall the car. But the price of that was that you can't give it any throttle whatsoever when you first start going. So it's, again, against everything that you've ever learned in driving any other car that's a manual. You let the clutch release entirely with zero throttle. And just at that point where you feel like you're just relieving the friction zone and it's probably going to stall from you, you feel this kind of kick in. The anti-stall propels you forward and the car just goes. It's really hard to get your head around, but once you get used to it, it's not all that hard to operate.
So it's a pretty big misconception of like a Carrera GT being difficult to drive. I would say that it's tricky, right? The clutch system is tricky to get used to, that, yeah, you have to basically do everything against what you've been normally taught of how to drive a manual. But once you get a feel for it of like, oh, you just let out the clutch slowly and it kind of does everything for you, like, it's actually pretty simple and it's pretty user-friendly in that way. Now, I will say, you know, driving this car a handful of times, you just can't be in a rush, right? If you're leaving a line, you can't be in a hurry to get it going really quickly. You need to take your time, be patient with that anti-stall system, especially if you're starting from a hill. I mean, I can't think of a 10 out of 10 more stressful experience than trying to get a CGT going from a standstill on a hill. But once again, you just have to trust the system. You have to be patient with it. And I think that's a lot of things about the Carrera GT that's just this misconception of what this car is like to drive, because not a lot of people get to drive, not a lot of owners drive them, right? And so there's all this talk that happens on the internet, and it might come from one or two perspectives of, oh, that thing's really scary, or it's really hard to manage, or it's, you know, really difficult to control. But every time that I've gotten behind the wheel, which, I mean, it still blows my mind of driving a Carrera GT more than once, right? Which most people don't get to do in their lifetime. But each and every time I get behind the wheel, I feel more and more comfortable and more at home. And once you kind of get beyond the fear factor of what you're behind, this is a very nice driver's car, and it's very easy to manage and control. Now, the thing that I would say is not very easy to manage and control are the external factors of where you drive this vehicle. That's what adds the stress and kind of the sweaty armpits of, oh, geez, like, you know, understanding the significance and the street value of this car makes it difficult to drive in a lot of situations.
Yeah, it makes you a little nervous, and that's where the psychology of it starts to come in. You know, you mentioned being on a hill. That's one of the hardest things to really deal with, is facing a challenge in this car. You know that you're supposed to let out of that clutch. You know you're not supposed to give it any gas. You start to feel the car maybe roll backward a little bit, and you're like, what's going to happen here? Am I going to back into the car that's, you know, behind me? Is this car going to actually start to go? And if you just have that patience, then eventually that anti-stall does kick in and it propels you forward even up the hill. It's pretty amazing feeling when it works well and you're just in command of it. But a lot of the times it's easy to psych yourself out, especially, let's say you're in traffic and, you know, you're getting a lot of people looking at you because you're in this pretty unusual, flashy looking car, and so the heat is turned up a little bit more. Imagine driving around in Monterey and you're at the corner and everybody's got their camera out ready to video you going by, and now there's a little bit of a crest to come up for. So it's just one of those things where you just need to be calm and collected when you're driving to make sure you're at ease with and comfortable with what the procedure is. But once you know that, it's no different than driving any other car that you had to learn how to drive perhaps a specific way. And then there's the power of this car. And it gets a bad rap because people feel like, you know, use that Widowmaker term. Yeah. That originated in the old Porsche 930 turbos, where the turbo lag was so great and the spool up was so sudden that it was really kind of a moment where it would put you off balance in the car. people would lift during a time where there's acceleration propelled by those turbos, rear-wheel drive car, the balance of the car wasn't set up such that you could lift under those circumstances. They've gotten a lot better with those over time, but this is a rear-wheel drive car with way more power than most of those turbos, and it's all from a naturally aspirated plant. You're talking 605 horsepower in a car that came from 2005, 2004. Just unreal levels of power for back then, and the tire technology really wasn't up to snuff to be able to give you the grip that you needed, to give you the confidence that you needed to be able to put all that power down in a lot of circumstances. So the patience would come in when you had to let the tires get up to temp and make sure that you're putting that power down gradually. You're not just stomping on it. There's things that you could do in other cars that they're going to get you in trouble in this car. And it's, again, part of that procedure and knowing how to use it for you to have a good and rewarding experience in it. But once you've done that, it gives you so much.
Yeah, I would say that this is really the epitome of a driver's car, where analog experience, no turbos, naturally aspirated, an incredible engine, an incredible engine note. The exhaust note of this car is absolutely insane. Manual transmission, like everything about it makes it that engaging driver experience that we want. And that's just how you have to drive this car, is you need to be engaged. You need to drive it. You can't be passively driving this vehicle, especially if you want to go quick in it. And I think that's what a lot of modern day hypercars and supercars kind of let you get away with, right? They have such engaging electronics. You know, they'll manage the vehicle that you can kind of be dumb with it, and you're not going to get yourself into a sticky situation where...
Yeah, it's like traction control is just going to save you, so just go for it.
Right, and you can do that. And so, like, this car is just not one of those cars, but, like, if you're a driver and you know how to drive a high horsepower vehicle, there's nothing that's, like, too much more extreme about this car. It's not going to save you in that time of need. And I think that's what we've seen kind of in these later years, as more people that have started to collect or buy these vehicles are drivers. And that's why you buy this vehicle in the first place. And so we've seen more people, you know, drifting CGTs or doing burnouts in CGTs, which you wouldn't normally see people do that, especially with those like only 1,000-mile examples. But you can see when those people are sliding these cars around, it's like, oh, it's very controllable. It's very manageable. It's just, you know, most people are afraid to do anything. And so whenever that situation occurs, they just don't know how to respond. So like, this car is phenomenal, and it is a great driver's car, and there's nothing really to be scared about, except maybe, you know, losing hundreds of thousands of dollars if you do anything incorrectly. That's the biggest thing to be afraid of.
And a lot of these cars, they're garage queens, right? They never see the light of day. You'll see these low mile examples when they do come up for sale. They haven't been exercised. They haven't been used. The oil hasn't been lubricating the machine parts in the engine. The hoses and the belts and everything get old and brittle and they break. And when you suddenly give a lot of power to a car that's been sitting like that, it doesn't end well. So I think that even adds to the reputation of how hard it is to use these cars and live with them. But when we sought out this car, the whole point was to find a driver's car, to find one with some miles, to find one that's been managed well and taken care of, but one that we can go use out on the road, and yes, out on the racetrack. One of the first things I did when I got this car was to install harness belts. And it's super cool. From the factory, there are brackets behind the seats that a lot of people don't know are already there that are ready for you to install your harness belts. You don't need to put in a roll bar or a roll cage. You don't need to modify this car. Install the belts and go. So that was one of the first things that we did because we wanted to be able to use this car on the racetrack. It's made to be able to do that. As much as it is the most beautiful and luxurious of GT cars, that's really where its sweet spot is. You can take this out on the track, and you need to be careful because it puts that power down quickly. The back end does get twitchy. Managing the car and being able to respond to the inputs and the outputs that it creates quickly is essential. So again, it's not that kind of car for somebody who just wants to go show off, who doesn't really have skills, who just stomps on the throttle to go and doesn't really know how to manage it if they get out of sorts.
Right. Yeah, and I think this car wasn't designed for everyone. This car was designed for those people that really truly enjoy being behind the wheel. And I heard this like really interesting clip on social media the other day of like, there's a difference between car people who love cars, and people who love driving. And I think there is a very distinct split between that of like people that love cars just for showing them off, right? It's this collectible, it's this rare thing that I'm really excited to have, versus the people that just love the driving experience. And this car is for those people.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate to have really fun experiences with this car, taking it lots of places. Since having acquired the car in 2021, I've got over 6,000 miles on this car. So it's getting used. It's getting used more than most of the examples you'll find for sale have ever been used in their 20 plus years of existence. And that's the whole point of having this thing. It lights up other people to get to see this out on the road, for the people who recognize what it is, or even those who don't. They say, what is that thing? It looks so different. To that gentleman you were referring to earlier who thought this must be a modern car, given the lines on it, given everything about its appearance, let alone the performance and the sounds that it makes. It's just a special car in all ways. And even from its very introduction at the Paris Auto Show in 2002, people were sort of blown away by what this thing is. And it's sort of a kick to get that experience and that kind of reaction from people when they see it on the road today.
It's a shame that a lot of these cars don't get used and taken out. I mean, being behind the wheel, this is a special experience. And it's not special just because people on the internet talk about Carrera GTs being this phenomenal analog car, and there's all this hype around this car, right? I think that's another thing to call out, is that there's a lot of people that talk about how amazing the Carrera GT is that have never been in a Carrera GT, let alone driving it. There's this internet persona behind it. But I can assure you, being behind the wheel, driving this car, it lives up to all expectations. This is for sure not one of those cars where it's like, don't meet your heroes. It's like, if you're given the chance, yes, absolutely meet your hero. Absolutely get behind the wheel and drive a Carrera GT. Not a lot of opportunities are going to present themselves. But I can assure you that like everything about this, it feels special. It feels significant. The view outside the windshield of how low we are, like you talked about, I feel like I'm kind of hunkered down in this little prototype. We're in this little pod, and even when you look at a Carrera GT from the outside, it does kind of look like the old school prototypes back in the days of, these big hips and these big fenders, and then kind of like in the center, there's just this little pod of glass of where you're supposed to exist within. And looking through the mirrors and out through the back, and, once you get up to about 70, 75 miles an hour, you get to watch that amazing wing start to rise. And it's just such a spectacle. Everything about this car is a spectacle and an experience. And I think that's what's so cool, is that you can do a common day thing in this car and feel special. And then once you start to be able to give it the revs and drive it a little bit harder, I mean, the noise from this engine is just unbelievable.
And the fact that noise is coming from really right behind your head really amplifies it even more. The exhaust is still a standard exhaust, not like what they did with the 918 with that sort of vertical stack exhaust right behind you, but you still hear all the mechanical sounds this car makes. You hear a little bit of chatter in the shifting. You hear and feel what the tires are doing in the road. The wheel gives you some chatter and response for your handling, what the road is doing, what the different surfaces of the road are kind of communicating to through that steering column and through the steering wheel. The fact that shifter for the manual transmission is mounted up high in a way that looks a little unusual compared to a lot of cars, but it's such an intuitive placement. It's right next to your hand when your hand is on the steering wheel in the proper location. You just barely move aside, you grab the shifter, you shift it into gear, you put your hand back. It's a minimal amount of energy expenditure and movement of your hand while you're focused on everything that's up ahead of you, like you should be in this car. And you say it's one of those things where it's not an example of, don't meet your heroes. This is a car that makes you feel like you want to meet your heroes. It makes you feel like a hero every time you drive it, even in what would otherwise be sort of ordinary circumstances. Just going for a drive in the countryside, out on the road, it feels special every foot of the way.
Talking about the steering wheel and the shifter a little bit more, I mean, the wheel in front of you, it's a normal steering wheel. It's just a circle, right? There's nothing necessarily like super special about the steering wheel shape, but the thickness of it is like almost perfect, right? I would say like BMW M cars, the steering wheels might be like a slightly bit too thick. And I find in some other cars, like the steering wheel's a little bit too thin. I want to feel like I can grip onto something. This almost has that perfect thickness. And on the wheel itself, there's no buttons. There's nothing. All that you have is this lovely Porsche emblem in the center, and it's not just a stamp, it's an actual piece of, almost looks like jewelry. Like it almost looks like rose gold with some other like gems in it for the red and the black of the logo. It's just beautiful, right? It's simplistic though. And I think that's a lot of things about this car is it's simplistic but beautiful and just functional. It's straight to the point. It just wants to be a good driver's car. And that shifter, once again, no kind of glitz or glamour about it. It's wood.
It's a throwback to the Porsche 917 race cars, which used to have a balsa wood shift knob to minimize the amount of weight that they had to carry. This is obviously a more substantial wood than that. It has this sort of zebra striping to it. Maybe it's like a mahogany or something like that. I wish I knew the name of that wood off the top of my head, but it's beautiful and it's polished and it just looks the part in this car. As unusual as it is, right? There isn't any other wood in the car by any means, but it stands out in a way, but it feels great in your hand, and it's just that sort of simplistic but straightforward elegance that they do so well in these German cars.
And throwback to motorsports, that's what this car is all about. But yeah, I don't think that I've been in a car that has the shifter closer to the steering wheel. Like the distance between from when I have to take my hand off the wheel and shift and back to onto the wheel, it can happen so quickly. And that's exactly what you want, is you want that ability to keep under control of this vehicle, right? Just in case anything were to get sideways or anything like that. But it's perfect, yeah. But once you first see the shifter and the shifter location, you're like, that's kind of bizarre. Like, that seems a little odd. But for the most part, it works out really nice. And you can tell that they really just focused on making this work exactly how you want it.
The design and the proportions are really interesting. You sit in these low slung bucket seats. This car has what are called the XT, or basically the larger seats. So they're a little wider across the shoulders and the hips, which works great for, larger drivers or passengers in the car. But they're still buckets, so they hold you, they sort of keep you in place. The bolstering is really good, and you're really low to the ground. I mean, it feels like we're driving around, 2 or 3 inches off the ground itself. The car is so low. The side view mirrors are, by comparison, up pretty high. The sills on those doors, they have to clear the carbon fiber tub. This is effectively a race car for the road, built out of a carbon fiber monocoque chassis. And the side view mirrors are up pretty high, like they're at eye level when you're looking out the side of the car. So it's kind of interesting, the perspective you get. You get an amazing view. You can see the rear 3/4 of the car looking out those side view mirrors as a passenger, as a driver. It gives you great visibility for a car that the visibility can be a little challenging out the back, given the tiny little windows that are sort of aligned with the cowls in the back of the car and the sort of high and thick pillar that exists in the back. But it still winds up being a very usable and functional experience. Again, back to that sort of German way of doing design. It's got to be functional first, and then we make it pretty. And they did a great job at doing both of those.
And it's the total prototype experience too. I mean, prototype cars are very similar in that sense of like the mirrors being very high. Like, I don't have to look down or up to find it. My eyes just go to the left and boom, it's right there. Another thing is like the revs rise and drop so quickly in this car. And I think that goes back to your point of like how things can happen very quickly in this car. I think that that's a reason as to why it's even between shifts. If you don't shift this car very quickly and get the clutch back out super quickly, the revs will drop below the point of where you want it. And then same thing as when you're downshifting, going to that lower gear, when you blip that throttle, the revs raise so quick.
Yeah, this is race car stuff. We keep talking about a race car for the road. That's what this was designed as initially, and they had to do work to make it a passenger vehicle. So the fact that it is shaft driven like a race car, you rev up really fast and it scrubs those revs off very quickly. So you kind of got to be on top of where you are on the rev range, where you are in the acceleration or decel pattern to be able to optimize it, use it to its fullest potential. But what a sound it makes when you do that. Oh, the revving up sound on this car at a red line that's 8,400 RPM. Again, in a car that's from 2005. There weren't too many cars doing that, and there sure weren't any that I could think of that had a naturally aspirated V10 that revved like that.
I feel like this car kind of has that like same sort of sensation to other people like a motorcycle does, where people aren't like looking for it, if that makes sense. Like, it's so low slung that when you're like going around like parked cars and stuff, like people almost miss it because they're not expecting something to be so low to the ground.
So many cars are high up. I mean, you look at pickup trucks today, and they're like a house. They're just gigantic. Look at the front of that thing. It's like 6 feet tall.
Our roof line wasn't even to the hood line
No,
of that
not
vehicle.
even. So you could just be out of visibility or just out of where people are mindful of.
It's like being the short guy at the party. The girls just aren't looking at you.
It's kind of that way. And I mean, even the 993 is like that, and it's taller than this thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely has that sort of so low it's almost invisible thing going on, which means it's even more on you as the driver to be aware of other people who are not aware of you.
Totally.
Because otherwise it's going to end badly for you, and they're just going to be like, I didn't see you down there. So the road here's a little bumpy. I got to say, we're feeling every little nook and cranny of this road, but it manages it well. You know, and at speed, you kind of get over those things quick. See my TC light or my go on there, dash. And you can see somebody who gets nervous in that moment doesn't have the muscle memory that you're experienced to know what to do. Like, you can get out of sorts really fast.
Right, and you can tell, like, the suspension, it, like you're saying, it is doing a pretty good job of like absorbing the bumps, but it's going to want a surface that's more in line with a racetrack rather than like a country road, like bouncing off the ground, especially when you're dealing with that much horsepower. It's not going to end in an enjoyable situation.
Yeah, even like the spring rate feels like it's more well suited for doing that stuff at speed versus doing it, you know, kind of slow.
Totally. Like this, with its capability, it's not going to give you a lot of time to analyze the road in front of you to, like, you know, pick out every single bump, crack, whatever that might disrupt it. You're kind of just going into the situation.
Yeah, you just got to absorb it and deal with the consequences in a hurry sometimes.
Keep those eyes up, look ahead.
Eyes up all the time. Watching that rear wing go up and back down.
So sick.
It's hard to say it's a downside, but it's one of those things where, like, you approach the other cars so quickly that...
Right, you run out of space so soon with this car when you get on it and going for it. And I think that's another thing that catches a lot of people off guard of, like, yeah, it's a 2005, but the capability of it is so good that it's like things just happen so much quicker than you would expect them to.
Yeah, and that engagement level, like, you're so absorbed into what you're doing. Like, the level of involvement is so high that it's easy just to sort of really quickly lose track. You get on it, it's time to shift. You get on it, you're at a speed that you didn't realize you were going. You better put those brakes on because you're going to be going way faster than you want. Eventually that's going to catch up with you.
Yeah, totally. Like, this car hides speed so well. Like, if you're cruising on the freeway or like managing a constant speed for a long period of time, like 80 miles an hour feels like you're doing 55. It's just, it lulls you into that sense of everything's okay, right? And like going faster maybe than some situations may allow is pretty easy to do in this car.
Yeah, it's sort of, in a way, it's this thing of contradictions, right? Yeah, it's bumpy and you feel the bumps. At the same time, it accelerates so quickly and so smoothly that it can get away from you before you realize it. And then the brakes are super capable. Like, you get on the brakes and those carbon ceramics, assuming you got them up to temp, they'll stop you, no problem. But if you try to do that and they're not up to temp, if it's just sudden and unexpected, you might find yourself in a bad situation.
That's what makes this car so good. Like, honestly, it's like, it sounds like it's a bad thing of like,
no,
all these things that could potentially happen, but it's like, that's what makes it cool. Like, that's what makes it enjoyable. Like, I mean, to an extent, race car drivers like when racing is dangerous. And like, I think a car of this caliber and this level, it's like that sense of things could happen at any moment kind of adds to the experience. Not
it's
necessarily
the potential,
away.
right? Yeah, I mean, why do people ride roller coasters? Well, roller coasters are by and large pretty safe. I mean, you hear about an accident once every, couple million rides that people go on or something like that. But it's that thrill. It's the sensation of speed. It's the change in direction. It's that feeling like you're connected, right, with what's below you. And this definitely gives you that sense, that overused kind of, that cliche, oh, it feels like you're on rails. Well, guess what? It does. when you move the car to the left, it feels like you're moving laterally to the left. You're not swaying, you're not going through that roll center, you're not doing that load transfer from side to side like you'd feel in, like, say, a heavier sedan type car. This car is so instant in its response and the feedback that it gives you. It's just so rewarding to drive like that. It's why we drive race cars. It's why we drive cars that we make other compromises for the street to get that feeling from them when we drive them.
And it does it in such an analog and raw way as well. I mean, we keep talking about how this car is the king of analog and analog supercars. It just really is, right? Like, a lot of modern day supercars, hypercars, whatever you want to classify them as, they can do that same sort of handling capability and that lateral feel and stuff like that. But as cars have developed and gone to this newer and newer stages, it's starting to remove, like, the driver feel a little bit, where this one, when you turn the steering wheel, you can feel, like, the weight in the wheel. You can feel the weight that the tires are carrying, even as you're going in this lateral sense. And it still feels effortless. It feels like the car wants to do it, but it's giving you so much more feedback than some of those modern hypercars give you.
Yeah, it's that resistance that you feel in the steering, that you feel through the wheels, coming up through the vibration. The chassis is incredibly stiff, but you have that sense that, you know, another cliche, if you drove over a quarter, you could tell if it was heads or tails. You kind of feel like this is one of those cars. But at the same time, when you get on it and the car just plants and the aero's doing its thing and you're getting higher in the rev ranges and you feel that torque available, like at the very slight move of just your toe on the accelerator makes a difference in the delivery of the power. It feels so good. There's really very little else like it that I've ever experienced in a road-going car. Passing lane ahead. That's music to my ears. And it's able to do that sort of Jekyll and Hyde thing where it goes from screaming down the road, putting down all this power, making wicked sounds, and then you're back to just civility in no time with just a tap of the brake and a downshift.
I don't know how much I would call this civility of, like, even when you're cruising, of, like, the engine noise just right behind you and this carbon fiber exposed seams and everything like that. Yes, it is an enjoyable experience and it can kind of calm itself down. I would agree with you that, like, there is this difference of when it starts to, like, howl and really get after it versus when you're cruising. But I like your definition of civility, as we have metal plates and exposed carbon and, you know, raw-mounted, hard-mounted seats and all this other stuff going on
There's
behind
different
you.
types of, you know, society and civil engagement here. So let's just consider it within the bounds of what's there. And
you can hear the chatter of the, you know, transmission and the clutch and everything like that. To me, this is the way society should be.
I'll take it every time. The world would be a better place.
But that's what's so cool is you look around, like, all this carbon, like, yes, there's the carbon fiber that's like the trim pieces in the door and stuff like that, which obviously the doors are carbon fiber, but they're exposing a couple elements to make it feel more sporty. But then when you move and you look down towards the tub, right, this car is made from carbon fiber, and you can see these really cool lines of where they glued things together. Like, it's just so race car.
You know, and this is a 20-year-old car. We've talked about that. There is a little patina, and not in the way you think about. The carbon fiber itself has this clear lacquer over it, and over time, that clear lacquer discolors a little bit. So what's typically a black and white and a little bit of a gray affair with your carbon, unless you're in like a Pagani or something where they integrate the color into the weave.
Or diamond dust.
Or diamond, whatever they use on that. I don't know, ground up like, you know, baby angels or something like that. There is a little bit of a sepia or almost a brownish tinge to the carbon, but only in the right light. And it's not distasteful at all. I'm not like a brown interior kind of guy, but
yeah,
it just adds to the overall experience, the knowledge that this thing has been around a little while, and
it almost
still
gives
looks amazing.
Yeah, no, it kind of like makes it look cooler. To me, it almost looks like a little like tortoise shell-esque.
Yeah, there's
Like those Ray-Ban sunglasses.
There's depth to it. It's interesting.
It's beautiful. And then, yeah, like the carbon fiber goes onto the floor because the floor is made out of carbon, only covered by these like very thin, basic carpet mats. But I mean, you're in carbon fiber.
Yeah, and we were talking about the Ferrari 488 Pista having literally metal floors. This car, you have proper carpets, like there's rugs on the floor, but the place where you kind of keep your feet, where you're going to plant them when you're really getting into it, there's a metal plate there with some grip on it, and it's just really nicely done. It feels somehow a lot more finished than that Ferrari, which pays a lot more attention to the kind of leather and the stitching and all those kind of things. This car still does that really well.
Now, I think the funniest thing that's on the interior is, so that I guess technically there's a radio. I wouldn't even call it that. I mean, it's this small little screen. It's got to be like, what, 4 inches across, if that.
Yeah. The Porsche Online Pro radio.
Which you could tell the radio was a second thought, which I don't think there's very many people that like could care about the radio or the sound quality in their Porsche GT. Like, that's not what you're listening to.
I've had that radio on, I think, 3 times ever. And mostly it's to show people like, oh, hey, look, there's a radio, and it kind of sounds like garbage because there's only 2 little speakers in the door, and, you know, they paid about as much attention to that as the radio. It does have a navigation system on it, which is kind of a joke. It's got like a 1 line of ASCII text with like a picture of an arrow or a diamond that represents a sign. I've never used it. I don't know why you would, especially in this day and age, but I guess at the time that was sort of whiz-bang. They had GPS and navigation capability in such a car. And there's a SIM card slot, just to give you a little bit more on that aging. I don't think there's any microphones or anything built in for telephone. I think that was purely for navigation purposes and or for saving media. There is a CD changer in this car, I guess. I mean, I've never used it. There's an icon for it.
Who's using the sound system? No one.
It's, again, one of these cliches like, oh, I'm just going to listen to the engine. But yeah, that's what you're doing when you're driving this car. You don't need to be rocking out to tunes because guess what? You're hearing the tunes of this engine. And if you don't really appreciate those, there's a lot of other cars you can be driving around in to listen to their wicked sound systems. This car is the sound system.
And frankly, it kind of doesn't really give you an option. Like we talked about, like, they didn't spend the money or time to put sound deadening in this car. Like, why would they? It would add weight and take away from this like raw driving experience. You're just engulfed by the experience and the sights and sounds of this car.
That's a feature, not a bug, as they say, right? The lack
100%.
of sound deadening. You want to be able to hear what the car is doing. You know, I've been in cars that have too much sound deadening and you can't quite hear the revving of the engine, and so much of when we make these decisions of when to rev, it's based on sound. I mean, I'm not staring at a tachometer to decide when to shift. I'm listening to the engine and getting a sense for, this seems like about where it's at its tension point, or it kind of feels like the power band is starting to fade a little bit. That's where we shift. So having that kind of entire experience where you're able to kind of feel the car vibrate a little bit, you're hearing the engine doing its thing. I wouldn't want any more sound dampening in this car than there is. One thing we didn't mention, I don't think, the pedals in this car are floor hinged. So instead of being hung like in most modern cars, they're actually attached to the floor at the bottom and they pivot at their top, kind of like a 993 era Porsche does. So it takes a little getting used to if you've not driven that. I've been in a 993 quite a bit. I've put, 30,000+ miles on my 993, so I'm really used to it. And it feels natural and it feels good and it feels well suited to this car.
I really do like the pedal feel, and the pedal feel, shifting, everything like that. It's the purest experience. I can't say it enough. And when you're getting on it a little bit back there and doing 3 to 4 shift there, and I remember another time when I got to drive this car and get on it and do a quick 3rd to 4th gear shift. It was the crispest, nicest 3rd to 4th gear shift I have ever done. And like I said, this car rewards you when you drive it hard and fast. So the quicker you can get that shift done and let that clutch out, the happier the car is. And it just instantaneously changes the revs to the next gear. I can't compare it to anything else I've ever driven before.
The gearing is quite excellent. If anything, a little long. but it makes sense that, the places where you're going to shift feel like the places where you should shift. And this is a car that likes to hang out in the middle of the rev range. Like, this isn't a car you shift as soon as you get to $2,000 so you stay in the efficiency zone. This car likes to hang out at 3, 4, 5,000 RPM on the road. I find myself driving around in third gear or fourth gear at what would otherwise be, speeds you'd find yourself in fourth, fifth, sixth gear a lot of the time, because it just sounds happy there. Can run out of road really quickly in this car.
I know we just talked about that visibility of being so low slung. We just went through a little construction zone, and like the Jersey barriers are like the K-walls or whatever you want to call them that they line construction zones with. This car basically sits below that wall. And so anyone that's looking, all they can basically see is maybe like the very top of the roof, like barely moving, but like who's expecting that to be a car, right? It's just so funny of like how exotic this car is that in like normal situations, people can just straight up not see it.
Yeah, standing next to this car outside, it kind of comes to like your waistline.
It's crazy to think about that.
One thing we didn't talk about is the performance of this car from down low on the revs. You should never lug your engine. It's not good for any car. But the car has torque, and it's got this power on tap. So like, if you wind up maybe in a little higher gear than you really intend to, but then you suddenly get on the gas, it pulls and it gives you a totally different sort of audible bit of feedback. Here, check this out. We're in fourth gear at a place we should probably be in second, okay? The over rev there at the end.
Yeah, you're right. Like down low there in the very beginning when you got on it, it was kind of like a Chewbacca like gurgle that occurred. So it's kind of interesting of like the way that the exhaust is set up, which sounds phenomenal on this car stock, of how it has like different vocal frequencies that it hits.
Yeah, and friends don't let friends straight pipe their CGTs. I just gotta say, the number of people ask me, oh, are you gonna straight pipe it? You gonna straight pipe it? Like, are you freaking crazy? Have you listened to what this exhaust sounds like? Why would you mess with that? To make it louder? Louder itself doesn't accomplish anything good. The sound, the tuning, the engineering of this thing was set up just so, and it's beautiful. It's like listening to an amazing symphony or your favorite music played live at a place with great acoustics, or whatever that experience is for you. It gives you that. Sure, you can modify things, just don't straight pipe it because your friend tried to talk you into it.
Yeah, like when you're listening to good vinyl, you listen to it at the appropriate volume. It's not like you crank your vinyl player up to 11. That doesn't make the vinyl sound better.
No. Like, we can overmodulate the sound on this podcast, and real quickly, you're going to turn it off because too loud doesn't reproduce correctly, and that's what they're doing with these systems. I get wanting a loud exhaust. I get wanting some crackle, some burble kind of thing. This is about the note that the engine makes, that note being put through the exhaust system and coming out the other side, how beautiful that sounds, the resonance of that, the feeling that you get from it. Just say no. Just say yes, really, if you're driving. You can hear it, there's almost like a chord, like 2 or 3 frequencies that play together in this harmonic way when you're getting on it. Just passed a really nice looking 356 convertible that just went by.
2 completely different eras of Porsche just witnessed one another.
And the car that brought to bear the name Carrera GT, right? The first car that was called that was a Porsche 356 Carrera GT special model. We saw one of those in Monterey during Car
wow.
Week. Here's that chord again.
Now, what I find incredible is that this performance of this car back in 2005 was so beyond its time that even in recent, Porsche met with Michelin to redesign an updated tire that still, right, maybe is, this car is a little under-tired for what it is, but think about that, like, the amount of performance that this car was putting down in 2005, they had to make a 2025 tire to match its performance.
It's one of those things where some of the bad reputation that this car had for safety was because the tire just wasn't well matched to the amount of power and grip that the car actually needed for the power that it has. You know, we are all familiar with some of the very unfortunate cases. With these new tires, there's a fair bit more grip, right? These are more akin to the Cup 2 tires we're used to on a lot of cars, whereas previously these were just straight up super sports, which aren't even available anymore. They kept making for this model of car. So it's cool to see them investing in and doing further engineering in support of what this car is about and giving it actually more capability than when it first came out. We're coming back here upon our home at Sonoma Raceway. It's been a fantastic afternoon driving this thing. It's been fun, each having a turn behind the driver's seat, each having a turn at the passenger seat, getting to experience different parts of what this car is about, kind of feeling it out on the road, using it for what it's intended, maybe a little bit for what it's not intended to, you know, driving into parking lots and parking it and things like that. But wow, what an experience. I feel alert and awake and alive in a way I didn't feel like before we got in this car.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, every time that I get to be in this car and Carrera GTs, it's just unbelievable. I'm amazed by the experience every single time, and it's always something that's unforgettable. And these cars definitely live up to their hype. So thanks for taking me for a ride.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking me for a ride. Hope you've enjoyed listening to the sounds of the car and hearing all about it. Let us know what you think. We're at This Is Cold Start on Instagram, or check out our website, thisiscoldstart.com. Give us some feedback.
This has been Cold Start. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Alice.
Thanks, Todd.